Okay, sorry for the delay if anybody's out there watching and live. We are going to start the meeting here at 10 after 6:10 for the Board of Directors Finance Advisory Committee meeting for tonight, Thursday, September 26, 2024. So, oh, we are going to start the meeting here at 10 after 6:10 for sorry, little IT difficulties there. Okay, so we're gonna call to order, which I just did. Essentially review the agenda. This is a pretty light agenda. Um, and if there's any additions or deletions, of course, section 5 for kind of more the discussion area. We can, of course, expand that to be more open. There is an open discussions, questions subsection. So if there's anything specific we want to talk about or call out right now, we can for sure. So any updates? Okay, I'll say no. Then the last is approve the minutes. My first time doing the minutes, so let me know if there's any concerns with it. The only thing I have noticed is I forgot to the time we adjourned the meeting, which I think was like 7:05, but I can go back and update that.
Do we actually have to make a motion in committee to approve minutes?
Yeah, I would do it out of formality. It's not required, but just to keep it on up and up and.
Okay, and we should use our mics too, just so everybody.
I would recommend it out of formality reasons.
I move that the Finance Advisory Committee approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
You can't yet. You're not appointed yet.
Not appointed yet.
I'll second that.
Wait. I won't second.
Any objections or sorry, any discussion items on this? Guess it's just the four of us. I'd be open for that.
Correct. Sorry, I'm thinking of quorum, but since it's just four of us currently, then that is technically a quorum.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Pass unanimously. Okay. The next section is the exciting section, right? We talk about the committee members. For those, I should actually print it and put it in this packet. I apologize. The motion that we put in place to the board that just happened 2 nights ago was that we extended the community members section from 3. It was just only 3 members to 3 to 6 members. So at this point now that gives us some wiggle room or some flexibility in what we want to see in appoints. And so at this point, I believe based on our last discussion, last meeting, that if that did go through, then our plan was to appoint all 6 members, or 6 candidates that we did the interviews with 2 weeks ago to the committee. I know it looks like we have Jared Isaacson is missing tonight. I think he might have mentioned he was maybe had a conflict. I can't remember. But any questions or I guess we'll open it up for any discussion around that.
Well, I want to thank the board for agreeing to increase the number of citizens that could be involved in this committee since we had such high interest. So great to hear that they were able to approve that. So, and delighted to have most of you here tonight. Thank you.
Okay. I think at this point, I have recommendation, but the recommendation from last time was to appoint all 6. I also have vote, which really should be a vote, should just be appoint, but I can't. This is where I haven't done this before. I'll lean on you,
Yeah.
Kat. Is there something that we need to say or an oath or a whatever?
It's not a vote, but you can affirm the appointment.
Gotcha. Okay. I want to get the list of names from, so I actually have them here. Okay. Well, for tonight, since we only have 5, 6 members, and we'll confirm, the appointment of 5, committee members, who will be Derek Duff, Mark Ankeny, Gay Gertz, Michelle Morrison, and Philip Van Cleve. Should we,
I think you
since he's
can,
missing?
I think you can still affirm him if he's not
Okay.
here.
The other person that's not here tonight is Jared Isaacson, and we are confirming or affirming that he will be a committee member going forward. So. Okay. At this point, it's really kind of discuss roles, responsibilities of the committee. I know we talked about it a little bit last time. And Claire, you wanted me to bring in kind of the information, which is what the budget what was recommended from the budget committee. There's what 13, 14 items to.
So let me go through those
Yep.
to
Yes, please.
share them with the board, and Kat, please chime in. You were there in the meetings as well, helping lead that. Items 1 through 3 were included in the budget process, so they've already been done. So it's not something that we need to work on necessarily in this committee. Number 4, we thought at that point when this was created that we would need a loan for cash flow. We did not need a loan for cash flow, so that loan did not happen. So we don't need to consider that one. And number 5, we did approve and the board adopted after the budget committee a balanced budget that included reductions. Now, they were very generic reductions, and then staff actually made the reductions in over the summer before school started. So they have made the changes in staffing, in got agreements with employee contracts with reduction of days, furlough days, various ways of balancing that budget. So I think that would be a good thing for us to have Galen Jacobson, I think, is she contracted director of finance? I'm not sure what her title is, but I think that's, it would be great to have her at a future meeting to kind of review that with us so we can understand how they balance to the budget that was adopted. Gayellen, Gayellyn Jacobson. Like it
Just for
sounds.
reference, we were provided a financial update. Her name and information is on that there.
Yeah. Another Oregon K-12 school finance person. We all know each other.
And if I could encourage everyone to turn on their mics when they're speaking, just for everyone at home. Thank you.
And remind me if I forget. All right. And then I'm moving on to item number 6. This was under when we had the former superintendent leadership in the district. And so we were talking about the state school fund during the year and then a reconciliation and making sure that as we go through the year, we do enrollment counts, we submit them to the state, that we're reconciling the money that we expect to receive and to match up to the money that we're spending, rather than waiting till the end of the year to find out what happens. And that was the old method. And what I'm hoping with this team, this committee, that we can help just review. And if they have to, if they need to, they will need to prepare something for us to review in order so that we can keep that going on a regular basis throughout the year.
Claire, do you know under 2C when the ODE reported extended ADMW will be calculated? What time of the year?
So May 15th is when we have the reconciliation for
Okay.
the end of the year.
All right.
So you'll note that that is before the school year ends,
Right.
right? So it's not even possible to get an accurate number,
Yeah.
but
You get a,
you just have to
90%.
yeah, you have to
opportunity.
project. And then there are multiple times that we get Oregon Department of Education updates, and we're always looking at 3 years at once.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the prior year because that final adjustment for last year will come out in May of next year, May of
Mhm.
25. We're always looking at our current year that we're in, and then we're also beginning to work on what we're going to budget for next year. So we need to start planning for that as
Well, the
well.
prior years are on the ODE database
Yes.
that you can get access to.
Yes.
So, I mean, any of us can go
Yeah.
and get it.
What I'm
Uh,
hoping to do is rather than us do the reconciliation, that staff gets into the practice of doing the reconciliation. And it's something that maybe we can ask Gail and Jacobson to help
Mhm.
us with. Thinking right now we should be looking at, we had a May 15th, what we were paid on for the rest of the year, but how did we actually land? And
Mhm.
it's got a lot of different components to it. And so probably one of our next meetings, we should go through that state school fund formula with this committee. And between Michelle and I, we'll help you understand how it works. And we'll probably look at more than 1 year so that you can get a feel for it. And then we can start helping with the providing oversight on how that's going.
And is October 1st still the
Enrollment
official
count.
enrollment count for a school district?
So you're paid based on the number of students you have enrolled
Okay.
every school day.
Yeah.
So while that October 1 is an official count that everybody turns in, it's not necessarily what
Okay.
you get paid off of.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Do students have to be in seat to count, or are there excused absences?
No, it's average daily membership, which means that you're enrolled. So if you're out sick, the district still gets paid for
Great.
that student for that day.
All right,
Yes.
great. Thank you.
Where it gets tricky is when they've missed 10 consecutive days, then you have to unenroll.
Yeah, they get withdrawn, and then if they're over 10 days, and if they come back on the 12th day, they get re-enrolled. Yeah. Continuing through this list. We have number 7 was, we did have OASBO leadership come in, and that's the Oregon Association of School Business Officials, that Jackie Olson, that came to many meetings. And we were at that point in time wanting to make sure that we had the latest information, and that's all happened in public meetings, so that's not something we need to worry about now. I would like to hear from staff if there's been any change in transportation contract and any adjustments that we have been able to, like, if we can lower than one route, that saves us money all year long, right? And just, I'd love to hear if they've had any success, they've been able to do that. Review benefit rates. That would be something, again, that we'd want staff to come in and help us understand that, especially the PERS bond rate. There was a lot of questions about that. And I'm not sure there was a really good understanding of how that worked by the prior leadership in the district. And so I know the current leadership has a better grasp on that, and it would be great to hear if we're on track for having the right amount of money setting aside to pay the debt service, to pay off those bonds.
Quick question on that,
Mm-hmm.
Claire. You're asking for staff to come in or give us an update on it. Is that both Galen or is that,
I think it's Gay Ellen,
Yeah.
every one of these,
Okay, yeah.
because she's the one that's the expert.
Okay.
And so she would know how to respond to these.
Gotcha.
These aren't necessarily a superintendent question when you get into detail. Certainly the superintendent needs to have a general understanding and provide oversight to the financial leadership, but the financial leadership is probably the person that we should be asking
So how does this advisory group work hand in glove with the budget committee, whose job it is with these recommendations? What is our role in relation to these
So the budget committee will not meet again until the
Okay.
spring.
until the,
So,
Okay.
so the budget committee, the first meeting is when the superintendent proposes the budget
Yeah.
for the year.
Yeah.
So, so the finance committee was created in order to continue the work that the budget committee started when they were, when we, not they, we were, approving the budget. Yeah.
I will add points to the budget committee is, and I know Dr. Radich is here only for short time longer. At this point, she's talked to me at least directly, I think to the board as well, that she would like to start this process earlier. And that'd be something that she starts addressing in the next year's budget this coming month in
Mhm.
October. So I don't know if that means that we would get actually more or get the budget committee together sooner or not. So just FYI.
Generally, in past, board has again reapproved any new budget committee members whose terms have come up and they're serving again, or they've chosen not to serve and then they found somebody else. So that has historically been done in December. So that, and I think that's in the policies. So that timeline might look different if there's a November start date that's being considered.
Sure, yeah, and that could be very well. I'm just saying that I think from Paula's perspective, or Dr. Ash's perspective, is that she would like to look at the budget sooner than spring, right? And so,
Agreed,
yeah. So-
agreed.
And I think to a large degree, one of the benefits of this committee is that the budget committee will have more information when we start. That we'll be at a better point with understanding where we've been at this year, and being able to make better recommendations and having that knowledge going in. So I think that's a big factor in this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but just making sure that we're seeing this through the whole year rather than it just being this one-time process of the budget committee. So.
Thank you. Back to me. Item number 10, construction excise tax recommendation. Now, this was something that the new board members had not seen the long-range facilities plan for the district. And so we asked for that to be shared with the current board. And then also for the board to review the planned projects with the CET funding that was approved in the budget. Now, since we've had a changeover in leadership, and we've reduced so many positions in the central office, I bet that's just sitting off to the side and not being worked on at this point. So, but just probably one of the minimal things we could ask for is for the current long-range facilities plan for it to be shared with the board so that they know what's in that plan. Because it was probably approved by a former board, and just for you to understand what's in it. And I'm not
that's-
sure how long ago it was done.
And that's outside of any bonds, right? This
You-
is
you
it's
ha-
very
you-
specific to CET, right?
Yes,
Right, okay.
yes. So, well, but the long-range facilities plan could be more than, it's what you want to do with your facilities, but it doesn't mean that it's just one source of funding. So you have the construction excise tax that you could be using, but you also have the bonds receipts that you received that you can use, and then the interest earnings on those bonds too. So all of that can be used. And the CET is actually needs to just be used on capital items, so it doesn't even necessarily have to be, the construction comes from where the tax is levied.
Comes from, yeah.
Yeah, it's not meant to be spent necessarily on construction.
Okay.
So has anybody done any long-range planning with all the new construction that's gonna go on in the north side of Newburgh?
So
in terms
that's
of-
not something that I could answer for sure.
Right, but I
Right.
mean, that's something that we should be paying attention to.
Yes.
Is what is the future possibility of income as all those houses get built on the north side of Newburgh. When I drive
Right.
by it every day on my way to take my high school granddaughter to early choir practice at 6:45, and I'm watching what that is, but we should know that. We should be estimating what those are gonna be.
Right.
And the ones that are already built and are.
It's just what year is it gonna hit?
Well, I
Right,
realize that,
yeah, yeah.
but this is not just worrying about this year's budget. This is worrying about,
Multi-year.
exactly, especially as we use this as the bottom revenue. And then it'll grow, and we need to figure that into the costs going forward.
Sure. Sounds like a great plan.
Well, that's a plan. I hope that people are already there.
Well, and we just don't know. I don't know. I haven't seen a long range facilities plan, but
And I will say that, yeah, we had not had that brought to the board yet. And like you said, with the change in leadership, we're hoping that that will come shortly after the appointment of a new superintendent. But I wish that we could give you an update from the board perspective, but we're not there yet.
yeah. Well, I must say, I appreciate that the superintendent was the one that was here to, the interim superintendent was here to help us get this meeting recorded and everything set up and ready to go. So we are definitely on a minimalist staff here, and just want to acknowledge and thank them for doing everything they've done for us, just with who they have in place. So, position control recommendation. This is, I don't know that there would have been time to put one in place, but there can be a manual paper system that can be done so that it has to be signed off on whether it's in the budget or not before the position is posted. And that would be probably a Galen Jacobson question about how they're temporarily controlling the FTE, the full-time equivalent staff.
And I know that they have done that in the past, so I think there's some probably knowledge and background that we can draw from to begin to make sure that we're using that process again.
As far as I understand, I think they did implement something. Again, maybe it's temporary or maybe it's like a phase one of a couple phases. So yeah, certainly. Basically, anything you're saying that we need updates on, I'm marking them so I can request them officially. It's say like doesn't have to be next month or next meeting, but like in the short term, like we'd like the updates on these. So
I would also just say that, yeah, I'd like to really see that one come, if it can come to the board or to the committee, or at least what the plan is. I'm passionate about that. It's what I do for my job. So realizing that was a thing, I don't get how, I mean, it makes sense how we got into such a hole because of not being able to control that position management control.
So just for our committee members, I'm just looking at our own website, and there's a very excellent explanation of the construction excise tax, what it can be used for, how much per square foot the school district gets for new and for for residential and for non-residential. So the CET charges $1 for every square foot, or that goes into the Newburgh School District Fund. So those monies will pile up and will be helpful.
I'd like to add to the construction excise tax, there's like a state indexing that you can link to. So if it was originally $1, but it's more than that now. So that might be something to look at too, is we're on the cusp of a bunch of new in building to capture just as much of that as we can to support the schools.
a quick question that comes to mind, and maybe it's more specific to when we actually have an updated presentation on this, whatever. Is this at the state level or county level? Because I know our funding is split between mainly county and state. So do we know what section of the government it comes from?
It's collected usually by whoever does the building permit. So I'm assuming it would be Yamhill County. And at one point, the board passed a resolution that identified the amount. And there may be another resolution that comes forward that says where our amount is going to be the same as the states, which is set every year. So that would be something to explore.
I think I remember we actually did pass that. So it's probably one of those things we're just learning about and just like, okay, just check, you know.
Well, and it does increase it, you know, it has an inflation factor in it, so it does increase every year. All right, and so item number 12, maintenance of effort and ESSER's funds recommendation. I know that they're still closing out the year, but I'm hoping that this, I know that Galen Jacobson was well aware of this, because we spoke about it, but it is, helpful because we had so many special ed expenditures last year that we weren't able to continue in the future years. So trying to really balance that out with the ESSER funding that the district had.
So do we need an update on that one as well?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do have a question on the ESSER funds, and we'll probably get there eventually, but I'm wondering, they all need to be expended by September 30th. And so making sure that we don't leave anything on the table to be, I know Galen's probably all over it.
I think it's an excellent question to ask. So it doesn't hurt to, what we know is when we have the financial components of this district all on one set of shoulders, it doesn't function well. So we want to support any way we can. So nutrition services recommendation. This was again from the budget committee, but it's not a decision they can make, but removing the cabinet level positions that were being expensed to the nutrition services. I would say it's highly unusual to have, even if they're providing oversight, you don't usually have cabinet level expenditures in the meal service program. So another update would be
They
good.
actually did that. In the current budget, they removed the cabinet level positions from that position and from transportation, I believe.
Certainly, we can just get an update just to confirm, but I think I'm remembering the same way that they did. And then item number 14 was a board action because we were spending down the fund balance lower than the requirement. We asked the board to have more time to rebuild it back. And for 24-25 when we approved the budget and they adopted the budget, the board. So that allowed us to not have to make further reductions, but to make that build back that fund balance over time.
This is something we, as a board, we probably need to come back and at least ask the question or address probably in spring again, right? To see if it's something we can meet or adjust it, et cetera, or if we're meeting it.
I think that it would, in the beginning of the budget process, the superintendent proposes a budget, and they could certainly propose in that budget, a certain rebuilding of fund balance based on what they're trying to do. And I think we even recommended something in the budget committee. And I don't remember the exact, but it was like a 3-year process to build it back, not trying to do it all in 1 year. So are there other items Michelle Morrison, you did mention one just a minute ago that we want to make sure we capture?
Probably a couple of other things to consider would be the commitment to technology and curriculum, especially if there's digital curriculum, which thanks to the pandemic, a lot of schools districts have moved to. So just being mindful of what those future commitments look like. And then I'm wondering that if the indirect rate is charged to federal programs, which is it's an allowable cost that you can charge a grant, and then that is a revenue stream into your general fund, and it offsets some of the overheads for administering the grant. And so that might be something too to look at.
I'm sorry, was there a title of that?
Indirect rate.
Indirect rate.
Do we know what what our current level of federal funding is? How much money we're getting through federal funding?
It was in the adopted budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So I haven't looked it up yet. All right. And does the budget committee ever look to see if there's any potential new revenues? Or is that, we just leave that up to the staff to recommend?
So the only local option levy, the superintendent spoke to that at a
No, I was
board
thinking
meeting.
of additional federal funding that the.
Oh,
school district
federal
can tap
funding,
in, that
sorry.
that we aren't currently.
So right now there is an opening for some technology infrastructure, but I don't know if staff if we have the capacity and staff to even make
Even-
an
even make it.
application, because it's not so much per student,
Right.
it's competitive grant,
Yeah.
so.
So if any grant writers are out there who are looking to help out, please.
And excuse me, because it's been a long time, but does the state still give additional money for the percentage of students who are special ed students? And is it
Yes,
still
that's all part of-
13.5%, or is it, I mean, is it capped at 13.5% of your population? Can you
It's
get
at 11%.
11%?
Yeah, and it's, there's also a high cost disability based on, there's a $30,000 that the district pays, but anything above $30,000 gets reimbursed. But right now it's about 50% reimbursement rate.
Right. And was the budget committee told what our percentage of special ed students is?
It's above the cap.
It
Most
is above,
districts are
yeah.
above
Oh, I
the
know they
cap.
are. I just wondered
but
what ours is.
I-
because it
Yeah.
hasn't
I have the
been
numbers at
affected.
home, but I want to say we were severely over the cap. We weren't like teetering there. We were quite a bit over the cap.
I think it was between 13 to 15%.
Yeah.
We do have that number though.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
But with that said, most districts are over the cap
Yeah.
because the cap has not raised in 40 years.
yeah.
And so most districts are sitting around that range
Mhm.
also.
And that is an advocacy point that's coming out for school districts. I know I work with the Portland Public Schools, and they have a legislative agenda, and that's one of the things that's on their agenda. And I'm hearing that across the state, that where there's a large amount of advocacy for increasing the cap, increasing the high cost disability percentage reimbursement. I don't know that we can afford it all at once because it's really expensive, but I mean, at the state level, but at the same time, it's something that needs to be addressed. So we'll have to put on our advocacy hats here as citizens of Newburgh to help get that message across.
Okay, I also wanted to share a couple things. So from the last meeting, we asked, one, can we get our student count? And then two, can we get at least the last financial updates? So that's what the small slides is. I'm trying to save my own paper and ink in my home. So that's what this is. Hopefully you can read it. This is the last update that Galen presented to us in June 24 of this year. And I'm not necessarily going to go read through it if somebody wants to, hey, look at this point or look at that point. But essentially we're going to show that at the 23-24, we were ending with a negative 1.7 million shortage there. And thinking then slide. One of these slides also is projecting what we're going to be negative for this year too. But this is also before they made all their adjustments. So this might not have that. But while you're reviewing that, I'm sorry, is there questions or do you?
The shortfall on slide. 1 to $1.5 million shortfall, but this again was June. I think things may have shaken out a little bit in the
I
last couple
do
months.
believe it's still
Yeah.
about
It-
that projection.
Yeah.
So that's the the last update. And then the student count, Paula and Galen basically said both today that since we're so close to the end of October, that they're they're not announcing in the numbers of students for this first month, that they'll provide that to especially the board, and then of course to us next month with the whatever the October 1st, tally is, because that's the first one that's due to the state. Additional comments from Galen though, via email, she says, I'm excited for this committee to get up and running. I believe it is important for this position to be represented at the committee meetings. Just unfortunately tonight she had a conflict, so she couldn't do it. See, I do have some thoughts on the calendar. Fall should include audit prep and presentation, as well as looking at how enrollment numbers compare actual to projected and the impacted ballot or impact to budget. Yeah, and then she says, I'm attaching the financial reports that we're still negative 1.7 from last year, and then negative 2 million after with adjustments for this year. Other than, sorry, go ahead.
Can you clarify that? Because I think what people could be hearing if they're watching this or go back and watch, they're saying we're 2 million short this year, but we just had to cut like 12 million. So how can you clarify what you're saying? Does that make sense? Because we did make reductions, but then that put us at balanced budget. So now,
Okay, yeah. So let's redact what I just said. So basically, based on even like the slides here, is that with the reduction of forces and everything else, that without that, I believe if we go back to the previous meetings and previous updates that happened over the summer, that we were negative 13 million, right? So with the calculations and with everything else, she's still saying that there's still potential of us being negative with just the reduction of forces by the end of this year, if we don't find other ways to adjust our revenue versus expenditures. Is everybody in agreement on that, at least from the budget committee or Saul or Director Ellen? You agree with that? Okay, cool. So that's where that, yeah, I hope that helps explain that a little bit better. I followed up asking, hey, what's your thoughts on a calendar? And we can move this. Well, no, I'll wait to the calendar time. And then when I talked to Paula, she said this for the committee is come together and like, what do you want from the school district? And how do you want the budget broken down or presented? So this is just exhibits A or B, whatever you want to call it. This is how they were presented in the past, right? This is the official adopted budget. Now, the official one, we may need something like this big, and people can, if you want to look at it, you're welcome to grab it and look at it. But is that what we need from this committee to help manage or have some oversight? Or is there certain levels of data or reports that we're looking for? So essentially Paula is saying, get your list together and then ask for it and see how we can accommodate that. I'll open
Yeah,
up for,
so I don't know that, I think looking at examples of other districts might be helpful to us. Michelle and I, both, have created budgets for decades, right? So, we have some experience with that, so we could maybe bring some suggestions back to the budget committee, but certainly having more summarized data instead of just a long series of account codes that are sorted and even not necessarily all the same way throughout the document, right? So so we could definitely, we want to make sure we're not putting a burden and asking something out of a system that's not possible to get. We want to make sure we're looking at what the system can do and what is easy for staff to accomplish. So
I think summarized data is good, but I'd also like to see detail behind it. It'd be even better if it was electronic or something that I guess you could manipulate, put in. Because you're looking at trend data, aren't you? Because you're saying 3 years. Are these 3 years?
So it has 2 prior years plus the current year's budget plus the next year's
Okay.
budget. So it's 4 years total, 2 actual, 2 budget.
But also within that, we've made some process changes over the last couple of years as well. I believe in, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but we may have been putting dollars in different buckets over the last several years, correct? We've made some of those changes.
Since.
Also from the prior to
Between
leadership
different
groups.
CFO
Yes.
CFOs.
And I'm guessing
Yes.
with whoever's we're bringing in, may have a different perspective on how that looks as well.
Yeah, so things were categorized differently. And so when there was a shift with past CFO to the CFO who currently is not here, there was shift on how she placed. Some things went straight to schools that weren't in schools before, that they were in other categories or other areas. And so I think that would be really difficult if we went past years back to filter through that. But I mean, I do have many of the budgets from years past. I think I probably have 7 or 8 years of budget. But at this point, looking at that, we probably would have an apples to oranges because of that shift occurrence. And not knowing exactly, like supplies were some of that shift or technology was some of that shift. With that being said, I think, well, I have a ponder because you're asking what we need. And then my wonder is, where is it in the forensic audit? Because I wouldn't want to like encroach upon that either, right?
So they didn't do any restatements for past years when they started changing the way they reclassified things?
No.
Okay.
So, I'm not familiar with what the financial system is here. And so I'm used to looking when I did reviews of, school budgets. I was looking at reports that showed the budget. Then it showed actual expenditures. It showed encumbrances and it showed a balance and oftentimes a percentage. So is this system here that able to do that? And can you ask for reports in different formats, or does it
So-
just have?
And you're asking for more actual expenditures and how we're going during the current year.
Correct.
And I think we've been talking about the proposed budget document, but certainly it's a great topic. And it's reports that should be given out to all the cost-centered administrators so that they can see how they're doing as they're going through the year. And yes, actually, Michelle, you have the same system where you work. So why don't you speak to what's possible?
Yeah, we do. I think they're on Infinite Visions here. Now it's School ERP Pro. There's a lot of custom reports that you can build, and I don't know what is in place here in Newburgh. It depends on how you utilize the budget column in the system. And so, many school districts will keep Excel and Infinite Visions so that they can, test that data against each other. But there are reports that are just like what you said. It tests the budget. It says what's encumbered, what's unencumbered, and then usually a percentage. One of the challenges with the system, and if position control is in place, this wouldn't be as much of a challenge. But for salaries and all of the associated payroll costs, whether or not those are encumbered for the full year and what that looks like, because the actuals with the payrolls, the way they're designed, they can be misleading.
And I do want to say believe about January to May last year, we were receiving monthly, essentially what you're talking about, really high level budget codes, but with encumbrances, percentages. And I believe that's where everything began to flood over. And I will say, as far as previous years, one of the things that did come up during our meetings with the previous financial officer was this last year they had tried an idea of changing the way that money was spent, where money was coming out of budget areas that weren't exactly what they were set up for, to try to find out the true costs of given programs. So letting them go over that amount. And there was a statement that by the end of the year, we'll have put those into the correct budget so we can see. It's tough to know if that did happen. But I do think that it goes back to that point of trying to track between years is probably going to be difficult, especially with this last year. So.
And I think part of this group, if we can do nothing else, just providing some transparency for our community. So I think having detailed reports is great for the budget committee and this group, because we'll probably want to see a lot of that information. But if we can have an output of this where we just are able to give monthly or quarterly kind of updates in a very simplified form to say, like, here's where we're at, here's where we're expected. Are we kind of in alignment there? I think that would be something that would be, I think, of benefit for the community, because I think that's going to continue to be an issue as we kind of process forward. Like, are we still on track to be $1 million to $1.5 million off as we progress through the year? Or have we made some remediations to be able to get there, to have a, so we don't end with a negative fund balance? So I think if we have that, and then, you know, if we have an ability to export some of that data and we don't have resources locally, I'd be happy to see what sort of licensing we have locally to put that into maybe a dashboard that we'd be able to publish to the community as well. I'd be more than happy to step up to do that.
Thank you. Any other comments around this topic?
I just
Kind
had
of wide
one,
open right now.
it's okay. I just had one question that wasn't answered. The audit? Forensic audit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have it written down as what's our status, and I don't know. We didn't have an update did we?
I guess the general audit or the forensic audit.
Forensic.
I have not had an update that I believe the board has gotten yet. And I don't, the way I remember it during our meeting when we passed the forensic audit was that there probably wouldn't be updates until it was finished, with an undisclosed amount of time that would be, depending on where it all went.
I would agree. Yeah. Because I remember, I think we asked for how soon can we get updates, and then like they didn't want any misleading information because it's kind of like hypothesis where we're going to go look down this rabbit hole and then find something and then whatever. And so, like, yeah, until it gets closer to being final, we probably will not see a true update. I think we approved that contract, not last one. So what, August 27th meeting? So I think there's, if that, those folks, whoever that firm or whoever it is, I'm sure they're just getting in the middle of it right now. So,
But I would say that it'd be a good idea to look into seeing if it has started, at least, because I'm not even fully sure about that.
The other thing that comes to mind after watching the budget committee is if we could get a definition on the GLs that we use for the school, because a lot of times it was very shorthand. And I think people who have been on the budget committee knew what those were, but for new board members or new people who weren't, having some sort of definition around what some of those categories would be helpful, especially for those who aren't specifically familiar with our budget. So.
would agree. That's had something on my, hold on. Regarding getting at least reports, this kind of comes to, will be a segue into kind of our calendar discussion, but I did ask, like, when would we be able to get some of this information? Because I'm saying if we try to meet before the budget or the board meetings, that's can be pretty early. That could be like even on October, that's the 3rd. If we kept it on Thursdays and did the week before the board meeting, it's like, would that information be available? and Gail. And so at this point, she thinks that's gonna be fine. You just have to realize that maybe not everything would have come out at that point, that maybe the large things would have hit and been balanced or whatever, because the biggest part of it is going to be the employment and paying the payroll and benefits, et cetera. But maybe some, account receivable type stuff might not have been fleshed out within the first few days. I just wanted to share that at this point, and now she will not be the long-term CFO, or financial officer, but at this point, from her perspective, she said this should be fine providing that information that early. And then Dr. Radish also agreed and liked the idea that if this committee can maybe see it before the board meeting, then we can maybe review it and come together and then have maybe our thoughts about it. Any concerns that then we can bring that to the board meeting itself the following week and bring those ideas or thoughts, concerns, et cetera, to the board. So any thoughts on that, I guess?
So are you saying the first Thursday of the month?
Well, okay, and then that's if we segue to the calendar, it would be, yeah, we can segue to that. I was just, I was just expressing that I did ask both Dr. Radich and Galen about the possibility of getting the financials or any reports that we're going to want earlier. And I'm really specifically about the financials, of course. But basically, and she says she doesn't think it will be a problem. Again, as long as we remember that some things, it might not be trued up as much as it could be maybe by the middle of the month. But most of it will be pretty
So
square.
for instance, a month closing would be, September 30th.
Right.
It would be highly unlikely that financial reports would be ready by October 3rd. Okay, just to say that out loud. Probably getting the August 31st financial report by October 3rd is more realistic.
So like a month behind.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you're gonna want to be in the first week of the month, you only get once a month reports, right?
Right.
So being in the first week of the month, you're never gonna get the prior month's data. It would not necessarily be complete.
Right. And that's what
Yeah.
I was trying to convey. Sorry if that was,
Yeah.
I was rambling. So.
It does seem though like us meeting before our actual board meetings would be beneficial for the purposes of this committee so that we could be more informative to the board. So in that case, I wouldn't be opposed to being that month behind so that we actually have well thought out ideas going forward.
It would also give us a chance to get organized with staff too. We, right now, October 3rd is next week.
It is.
So, I don't know that that's giving us even enough time to
Right.
organize ourselves to be ready to work with them on it. So
Yep.
just a thought.
So it's really not looking at the calendar, it's really not the first Thursday of the month. It's
It's the Thursday prior
prior
to the board meeting.
Because it's
Yes.
the second Tuesday in.
On a couple of them. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So let's just jump in. So I provided, go ahead.
The Thursday before the second Tuesday
There you
of
go.
every month.
There you go. So yeah, I did provide a document that basically said, okay, here's the reddish dots were like our board meetings that are currently scheduled and what we went through so far for July. Some of the special ones I didn't throw in there. The green dots right now is currently for September is what we've done so far. And then continuing, that would be the Thursday before the board meeting. Again, it could be the first Thursday, it could be the second Thursday, as long as it's before the first or second Tuesday.
Most of these fall on the first Thursday, and I have a commitment on the first Thursdays.
Oh, yeah. Well, then we don't even have to do it Thursdays. I'm just saying if we kept it on Thursdays, but this is one representation to say, okay, this is what it looks like if we did it before the board meeting. And then I don't want to do 2 meetings in the same week. So and then maybe that's more selfish. Like then the blue dots are like what happened the meeting after the week after the board meeting. So these are just representations of concepts. We can
So-
certainly talk about it.
Availability for the current interim director of finance. Is she available on Thursdays? Because she had a conflict and I wonder if Thursdays are a conflict for her in general. And do we need to consider another day of the week?
Is it not in the email response? Hold on, let me skim this real quick.
Yeah, because I definitely think we want her here.
You can make an assumption on this response that yes, that Thursdays are probably not good for her, so. But then I don't know how long we'll have her, so. That, I mean,
I think it'd be good to pick a schedule that works for her.
Mhm.
And then when her replacement comes, then we adjust the schedule as needed.
And I'd rather wait and see the richest data than to rush it and have just cobbled together data. So if that means, after your October 8th board meeting, for her to be able to get the August and whatever she can do for September to us and late October, that should be, we need to have a pretty good picture of what those first 2 months are. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I mean, what I heard you saying was that you didn't think she could be ready by October 3rd or anything. So it would,
right.
I'm perfectly happy with it being later in the month of October and having as great a picture as we can get at that point.
Well, and there are some things that we have on the agenda that are not necessarily requiring her, like Michelle and I's tutorial on how the state school fund estimates work. And we could spend, 15 minutes on it, or we could spend an hour on that really easily, right? Depending on how much you want to understand. So, and that wouldn't require the director of finance. Maybe we get to our financial reporting for the November 7th, and that could be through September 30th. And meanwhile, if we have one in October, it's more things that doesn't require a lot of work from staff, but we could have some learning with this committee. There's lots of things to understand about how a school district finance operation works.
Sure. Well, let me ask this question to kind of work through this process. I just picked Thursdays because we did the last 2 meetings on Thursdays. Are other days of the week fine, except for Tuesdays or high board meeting probabilities? Would like a Wednesday night be good, or people have other commitments on Wednesdays?
For me personally, I mean, any day is fine, but I'm sure most people Mondays and Fridays, and then if we're not doing Tuesdays, it's either really Wednesday or Thursday
Sure.
to me are the best days.
Right.
I just can't do second Wednesdays.
I'm gonna be honest, Wednesdays aren't ideal. I can make it work, if that's the case, but, yeah, just take some planning.
I mean, there are Mondays and Fridays, but it's just usually especially Fridays.
Probably not Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm having cataract surgery in October on a Wednesday, and then in November on a Wednesday.
Okay.
And I only have 2 eyes, and that's the end of it.
I'm a Monday, Wednesday person.
Your availability is Monday, Wednesday is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine on Mondays or Wednesdays. The school board used to meet on Mondays when I was on the board. So
Apparently we moved it to Tuesdays.
Mondays are typically fine for me as well.
I could do Mondays, or I would prefer Wednesdays probably. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so I think we can have a theme. Do you have, you're saying, Saul, you're saying Wednesdays are not a deal, but what about Mondays?
I could do Mondays.
Okay.
And I could do a Wednesday. It's once a month. I can move things around, but.
Okay.
It also appears that probably the first week of October won't be necessary to meet back up. I get that that's just on here for.
Right.
Could we just set a date now for October in which the tutorial could happen? And then we could revisit see, and you could find out then when she would be available in November or no, we said November, when she'd be available in November to give us rich financial data. And then we could go from there after that. Would that work?
I'm good with that. Are there other items that would be, I mean, I know you say the state's funding can take 15 to an hour. Are there other items that we could do like tutorials on or education on?
I'm
to help
sure
that time?
once we have the list, we need to go through the list that you've created with Gail and Jacobson and figure out what's the timing for those. And then the items that aren't working with her, then we could work on getting those here on our own. So, it,
You're talking about this, the, like, we need updates list.
yeah,
That right. Okay,
right.
Okay.
Right.
Right. Okay.
And it might also be good for us to review the adopted budget in with this team as well, with this committee.
Would that be something that we should just talk with? I mean, I'm sure we can get more of the official budget. Maybe it might be something like that we can send out electronically, but will we want Galen with that, or we just talk about it through ourselves and what questions we
I
come
might
up
even
with?
get an Infinite Visions report that has more of a summary to it rather than every individual
Sure.
line of every benefit and every
Okay.
kind of salary that we have. I mean, it's very detailed. We really, it's not something that it doesn't help you analyze the data when it's that detailed. I mean, certainly, yes, you want to have the detail available to you, but it's not helpful for trying to digest it when
Yep.
it's that detailed.
It may be beneficial too for this group to look at a couple different budget documents just to get an idea of what's out there and what's acceptable and best practice in terms of executive summary, organization, financial data, and then statistics or other information that may or may not be included, depending on the desire of the budget committee. But I do think that there are other more graphic and summary type documents out there that would be good just to look at.
Is that something that you are saying you and maybe Claire or Galen could, all three of you could maybe come up with some?
Yeah,
There's a-
I'm sure
there's a handful of
Alan has
options.
access to them as well. So
So,
yeah.
okay. I know the data analyst guys were like, yeah, we like the infographics.
Would that be helpful to the committee if Michelle and I met with Galen and went through this list of requests and came back with kind of a summary of what maybe kind of charting it out when we might be able to have different pieces of it?
And I would appreciate if the board would let us know, and maybe you already know this answer. What is the plan if this is if Galen is interim? Is the plan to hire a new superintendent and have that person hire the financial person? And what is the timeline for all of that? So that I'm only asking the question in relation to the work of the committee in terms of trying to provide financial advice as the 25-26 budget,
Right.
Gets put together.
So I'll share what I know, and I think what the board knows. I think there may be some more information that some people know that I don't think it's made public yet. So bottom line is there were multiple applicants for the financial officer. And at that point, they at least had one round of interviews, at least with one or maybe two of those folks. This was before the last board or before because we had that update on the August 13th. So it was that week or whatever, right around that time is when, I'm sorry, September 10th. I'm sorry, that week, they were going to have those interviews. At that point, though, we did not get a board update this last week or this week of what happened with that. And I think Dr. Radish is going to make an update on the next board meeting, which is on the 8th, of where they're at with that. So. Interviews? There's another meeting. I want to say it's on the 30th.
So
Yeah, that is specific to just superintendent interviews. That's correct.
So you're talking about the interviewing for the financial position.
I was talking, what I was first referring to, yes, is that Dr. Radich and Galen did interview, or maybe it was Galen and somebody else. They did a first round interviews with the applicants that they had. That was again 2 weeks ago, roughly. but
So Galen, so is Galen leaving or she just?
she's
not-
just short, she's interim, she's short term.
Okay, so she's not applying for the job or anything, so she, or is,
No.
okay, I'm just curious, so she
She
may.
is retired and out of the gracious.
Okay.
Yes.
He's returned to help.
So it was posted on COSA on the 13th of September, and it says it doesn't close until the 27th of September,
For,
the finance director. I'm just letting you know what COSA has it posted as.
well, maybe they did something again, so maybe that's what's public side, but like, we have not received a report from the board level perspective yet of what happened to this first few applicants. So maybe they did a round, they weren't good, and now they're waiting and reposted. I have no.
And
idea.
at the end of the day, the board doesn't have authority on hiring
Yeah.
that person, and it will be dependent on
But
the
the current plan
next-
is to hire the finance director before the superintendent in order to replace.
I don't know that. Again, I think that was kind of the route they're going down. I have no idea at this point. Dr. Radge has not provided us with an update on that. So,
Can I just say, it sounds like a summary would be that there's a lot of like knowledge that we can gain
mhm.
from looking at some of like state school funding stuff, some other just documents that it might be worth meeting once in October, just as a knowledge growing.
Right. I would totally agree.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
The enrollment counts would be available to us as well.
Yeah. Since we don't necessarily want to do 2 weeks in a row, I would say let's shoot for the 17th then. Is our meeting well, actually, no, we're talking about Wednesdays. 16th, but then Michelle, you said Wednesdays aren't the best for you? That'll work, okay. So,
Now, is your surgery on the 16th?
It's on the 23rd.
Oh, hey.
hey, whew,
If we do it on the 16th, you have a board on the 17th, right? Does that work for you?
we have a board.
17th was, I think.
Is one of our just projected, like before or after the board meetings, right? The red should be board meetings.
So if we're just doing we're not having Galen here, it doesn't matter if Thursdays are bad for her, if we're just doing this. So the Thursday is really still open.
But, well, we still haven't asked
Actually,
her. I haven't asked her though.
Thursday didn't work for everyone in this room tonight.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I think that I'm hearing consensus around the 16th.
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And then she may be available and she might be able to provide some things and maybe, I don't know, we still have to reach out and ask if that date works for her. Because this was specifically about tonight's meeting. And then she hinted at she may be busy Thursday nights, so. Okay, so let's do that now, just long term, okay, so I know it's kind of back and forth. I think at one point we, was presented to the board that maybe it was the first 6 months monthly and then go to quarterly. And then I'm like, well, maybe the first 3 months and then think about it and go to quarterly. Do you know how many months in a row we want? I mean, again, I know we're going to October
think-
16th first, and then after that we'll decide, but like,
I think we don't want to make that decision tonight.
okay,
We want to start chunking up the information and seeing how many meetings we need.
okay,
Okay,
that works for me too.
And then, can you bring some samples of the financial type reports that you can generate off the system? So just so I.
so I can't personally do that, but
Right,
I
me
can
too.
certainly, when we
can
have a
make part of the
conversation
request.
with,
Yeah.
yeah, we can make the
So
request.
then
Sure.
we can kind of look at what we can
Yeah.
see. Because I think for me, it can help me. know-
Well, and it's something the board should be seeing on a regular basis, so
Yeah.
Right.
that makes a lot
So,
of
and you could
sense.
see one, maybe do, I don't know. I'm used to California, I'm used to the school districts I worked at and, so we could dial it down really small, so
Right.
it's still in a summary format,
Yep.
or you could expand it to include several different funding sources.
Right.
So just a sample of some of the options you can do. How fine can you drill it down?
Sure.
And how far can you expand it?
Yeah, then actually the 16th will work good because I know on the 8th, we have a busy meeting and quite a few budget items. And I think that's where we're going to see the first, I'm looking over Director
Yeah.
Allen's shoulder here.
We'll have a budget status update, budget assumptions and parameters for 25-26. And so I
Start
think-
talking about appointing budget committee members. So yeah, so Dr. Radish wants to get on top of this next meeting, so.
So
The
Can I-
October 8th meeting.
Can I go back to our calendar
Yep,
for a
yep.
moment? And so I think we have consensus around October 16th.
Yep.
I wonder if we might have consensus around November 6th as the November meeting, and then we get into that cadence of before the board meeting.
I like that.
Works for me.
Great. So now we have 2 months scheduled, and then by then we'll have enough information about how many more we need before we get maybe to every other month or every 3 months.
All right. We may at that point have someone permanently in that role that we can determine a schedule as well.
Yes. I would agree.
Well, and I think it's important that we're really supportive of staff and working alongside with whatever they have available to them, and then also getting ideas from them about how we can support them in their work as well. So they, our new person may have additional ideas on what what we should be reviewing too. So.
Yeah, and just to recap, besides the 2 dates that you and Michelle are gonna meet with Galen and try to come up with the time to discuss potential report options, correct, and bring those back by the 16th?
So we'll meet the three of us, and then we'll make sure to report back to you as the committee chair. And are you the vice chair?
We have not,
I thought you were technically, but
I think that did the board chair
yeah.
make you vice chair? Yeah, so we'll report back to the two of you
Okay,
so that you can plan for your meeting on the 16th.
sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. So that's really what I had on my agenda. I'll open it up to anybody else. Last minute questions, requests. Anything else we need to talk about? Okay. And one last thing, I think everybody did it except Jared. I know you came in late. So this is just your name and phone number. We're not going to share the phone number, but this is just for internally, and then Paula has it too. So we have records if we need to contact the committee members. And then also the names, they're also mainly going to be triggering 2 things. One, a little name placard, maybe not official one, but maybe it's the folding TP style. And then also you're going to get a Newburgh School District email as well. So we can officially communicate that mechanism and not have to go out to public. Well, I know it's still Gmail, but not, or, base, but not go out to like public email systems. So we will not share phone numbers except for just who needs to know them. So other than that, we have our next meeting set or talked about. I think we're going to join the meeting at 7:23. Thank you, everybody.
Share my emails, my phone number.